Okay, we can start.
Okay. My thing is frozen, Menachem. Just give me 1 second. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program. Thank you for joining us on the beautiful Sunday night. Menachem also, please admit, June 8th night. Tonight's a big event at the Year, but for the people that didn't go or are home, thank you for joining us. First, I want to thank all the people joining us every week, and thank all the viewers for posting on the WhatsApp statuses and telling people about the program. As I said, it's every week. It's amazing. It's a place to talk through important topics, and thank you for joining us every week. And if anyone wants to join the WhatsApp chats, you can join us at 732-314-1710. We'll also add to the community chats. You can go to menachembergfeld.com, sign up for the flyers as well. And Menachem will send you all the speakers, all the replays, and all the good stuff that happens in Coach Menachem. I'll also be posting the link if you want to join the community chats. For all the people that are watching us on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button. You can also click on the like button. So every week when we post the videos, you get to see them. And thank you again for all the advertising sponsors. There's the Lakewood Scoop here in Lakewood, Ellie and Arrow for 5 Town Central, and Chayla Kalfa from JCN, the Jewish Contact Network, for always promoting us on all the Jewish digital platforms. Again, if anybody doesn't know, we're doing this already in our 6th year. Every Sunday night at 9 p.m. we have different programs, different topics, different rabbis, different therapists, different world speakers that come on. Next week, June 15th, we're going to have world famous Rabbi Vichai Cohn. The topic wasn't confirmed yet, but he's a big, big speaker, and hopefully it should be a very powerful program. And tonight we have world famous Dicken Bettinger. We'll get into him in a minute, but we'll turn it over to Coach Menachem to open it up. Tell us all what we're doing here tonight, what the topic is tonight. Menachem, open it up.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem. We are excited to have Dr. Dicken Bettinger with us. Tonight is a big event, the Jewish event, Adir Torah, and I feel like, watching some clips, I would love to be there. And it's part of, like we discussed, we're coming off Shavuos, and with the Torah, by us Yidden, to be connected to Hashem and to the Torah is very important, and there's nothing more important than that, and that's what we're looking for. Like we heard before Shavuos, that's, the importance of seeing where am I with my connection with Hashem, connection with the Torah. So here we are continuing that. Tonight, the discussion. The truth is, I was thinking we had many programs, and we try to figure out, put things on the table many times, things that we don't talk about. People are sitting, trying to figure out their own life issues or some challenges. And Baruch Hashem, thank God we've come a long way and we're learning. We are learning, nothing to talk about. However, there are those who still have questions, meaning that after all, their own situation is different, because it's very nice to hear chizuk, to hear encouragement and all these great ideas, how we can try to figure out how to navigate. But at the end of the day, when I'm in my situation and I'm in pain and I'm trying to live life, by me, it's real. By other people, maybe it could be it's a thought, it's an emotion, you can try to figure it out. But when it comes to my own life, it's like, how do we get the answer for that? And we've had many programs, I believe, by being able to slow down, being able to take that pause, to get some clarity, which is very important. And again, many times we could get that shift, we could get to that clarity that we need. And sometimes we feel like, okay, I have it. And then the next day we're still searching, which is could be part of the system, how it works. But here we are. So hopefully tonight we'll be able to slow down, to pause, see what's going on, ask our questions, and see how we can navigate with our challenge. And even though something outside of me is not going to change, if something inside of me, the way I'm thinking, my perspective, and with my connections, how things can slowly change and we can get that shift. So my hope is that with the discussion tonight and with having Dr. Bettinger, by the way, just interesting to know that you are a psychologist for many years, practicing for many years, and then you came up with this new idea and you're discussing, talking about this versus psychology, which I would love to hear more, to understand where psychologist and psychology takes you and where the three principles and the insights that you're going to talk about can be a little bit a different shift. So I'm sure it's going to come up, and I'm very excited. And let's hope we get some answers. Thank you, thank you.
I'm very honored to be here.
I'm gonna introduce you. Let me just let people know who you are. Okay, so
Please.
we're gonna start with Dr. Dicken Bettinger. I'm gonna read his bio. Dicken Bettinger received his doctorate in counseling psychology and worked during his career as a licensed clinical psychologist. Dicken's entire career has focused on psychology and well-being. In 1986, he met Cindy Banks, who shared a powerful, profound, and new understanding of the human mind called the three principles that unifies our connection to deeper intelligence called wisdom and our psychological nature. While living in Vermont, Dicken co-founded one of the first three principles training, counseling, and education centers. Later, Dicken served as a senior staff at the Pransky and Associates in L.A. Connor, Washington for 16 years, where he developed and led the corporate and university leadership training, team development, and cultural transformations. In 2012, Dicken founded his private practice, Three Principles Mentoring. He offers 4-day immersion retreats for individuals, practitioners, developments, and advanced training programs. He enjoys leading groups, seminars in the U.S. and Europe. Dicken serves on the board of directors of Three Principle Global Community. Dicken is the co-author of a book on the three principles called Coming Home, Uncovering the Foundations of Psychological Well-Being. Dicken has been happily married since 1969 and has 2 adult children and 4 adorable grandchildren. He enjoys photography, hiking, canoeing, exploring art and different cultures. He values making new friends of all ages on his travels. And it's an honor to have you here tonight. Dr. Dicken Bettinger, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here, and it's a very auspicious day. I understand that. So I appreciate you all who have come here to participate. I had been a psychologist for 10 years, and in traditional psychology, you wanted to explore people's past as a way of trying to help them have more well-being. So you would ask people to talk about what was going on in their life that they were struggling with and having difficulty with. And as clients would think about the things that were not going well in their life, they would become more and more upset and unhappy. And here we are trying to help them become healthier and more resilient and happier. And it was a painful process to take people into the past and into their most painful memories. But the theories in psychology at that time supported that this is what you had to do in order to regain your well-being, even though the process made people feel worse and worse as they talked about it. And then after I had been practicing for 10 years, I came across a man who had had a profound realization of God. And he was convinced from his own experience that in the quiet of people's minds, we could open up to something more powerful, more creative, more helpful than we could find in our own brain, in our own computer. And he wanted to connect the spiritual dimension of life with the psychological. So in his realization, he realized that there are 3 fundamental gifts that we are given by God when we're born. We're given the gift of a mind, that allows us to be connected to an intelligence that allows us to navigate our way through life. But the mind is more than what psychology had been talking about. The mind is more than the personal mind, which is the brain. That's the computer. But there's an intelligence that knows how to create and operate the computer. That's God. So he talked about universal mind or divine mind, and how in our quiet moments we can access a deeper level of intelligence than we can when we're just using our computer. And he said, so he called that one of the three fundamental forces that create human psychological functioning. The second force is consciousness. Every human being has a mind. Every human being is conscious. That means every human being is aware, so that we can become aware of the fact that we're connected to a deeper intelligence, what some cultures, many cultures throughout the world have called wisdom, and saying there's a difference between the intellect and wisdom. And then there's the principle of thought. All human beings think. Every human being thinks, and the power of thought is what creates and generates our thinking, and that whatever we think, we will feel. If a sad thought is created in you, it will create sadness. If a stressful thought is created in you, it will create stress. If a loving thought is created in you, you will experience love. So when I started learning this, one of the very first things that happened to me, I was sitting in a hotel room, and I started thinking about a meeting that was coming up a week later. And as I thought about that meeting, I became more and more anxious. And I was learning in my classes how every single feeling that we have as human beings is created from the power of thought. And either you're aware of that fact or you're not. And so all of a sudden, for the first time, I think in my life, I suddenly became aware that I was sitting there in a beautiful day in a beautiful city, in a beautiful hotel room, and I'm thinking up a whole anxious story in my head. My thought movie was creating this incredible anxiety. And when I realized it, it was like realizing you have your hand on a hot stove. You don't need anybody to tell you what to do or a technique. When you realize where your pain is coming from, you take your hand off the stove. And so what I did was I stopped thinking about the meeting, and my thinking quieted down, and the anxiety went away. And by the end of that week, I had about 60% less anxiety in my life, because every time I started feeling anxious, I started realizing it's being created by my thinking. I'm a free thinker. If I want to, I can keep thinking about this, but it'll keep creating this feeling. If I let go of it, I'll quiet down and feel better. And then I started to realize when human beings' thinking quiets down, they're built to feel better. I've seen no exceptions to this. I've done trainings all over the world. I've done trainings in Jerusalem. I've done trainings in Prague. I've done trainings all over Europe and Scandinavia. When people quiet down, they're built to feel better unless they start thinking thoughts that create tension, stress, or upset. We're built to feel good. So when our thinking quiets down, we start to feel better. And when we feel better, we do better. We think better. We make better decisions. For 16 years, I worked with leaders of companies, I worked for 15 years for a multi-billion-dollar company doing trainings throughout the company. And as people learned about the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought and began to become more aware of how they were using their thinking, they began to use their minds more wisely, and their productivity went up, and their creativity went up, and their ability to communicate improved, and their ability to deal with difficult problems improved because they could tap into this deeper source of creativity. As often you may hear people say, let go and let God. When we let go of thoughts that are disturbing us, upsetting us, creating our tension and stress, we start to feel better. And when we feel better, the quality of our thinking improves and we do better. So pretty soon I'm sharing that with all of my clients. And then pretty soon I'm doing seminars about how everybody has the potential to experience well-being because we're connected to this divine wisdom in the quiet of our minds. We access that divine wisdom. It breaks through into human consciousness and brings us thoughts that are helpful to us, new and fresh thinking that brings us feelings that are uplifting. That's the beauty of how responsive God is to our needs when our minds become open, quiet, and receptive to that divine influence. So that's what I do. That's been my career. And I've seen people I've worked with people who have, I've been working with people in Israel who are suffering from things that have happened during the war. And as they understand better the role of thought in creating their feelings, they start letting go of more and more of the thinking that creates their upset. And as that happens naturally, they fill up with feelings of peace and love. And then they can bring those to the people around them who are suffering. So well-being is contagious. It's our birthright because we're spiritual beings connected to the divine powers of mind, consciousness, and thought.
Okay. Think you want that to be your opening? We'll get into the questions.
Unless you have some questions for me, we could start there. I could tell stories of people that I've worked with. Wherever you want to go with this.
Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, let's first start off with a poll. I'm gonna ask everybody a few questions. Let's see where everybody thinks this is going, and then we'll fill it out. Okay, have you ever had a moment where you just one thought completely changed how you felt? Do you ever have a time that you were feeling a certain way and then you had one thought and completely, I guess, put good to bad or bad to good? Yes, no, I'm not sure. I don't even think it's possible. First question. Second question. Which of these do you struggle with the most right now? Four options: overthinking, stress or anxiety, feeling disconnected, self-doubt, and fear. 3, do you believe deep change is possible without changing your circumstances? Yes, definitely. B, maybe, I'm open. C, no, I need an external change. So everybody vote on that. Then we'll share the results. Dicken will review it together. And then anybody who's here tonight, we have one of the most world famous speakers that could really help us. So please take the opportunity to ask a live question. When he has a live question, text Usher Parnas. And then live goes, anybody who's going to ask him live will go first. Anybody who just wants to text it will be secondary. Okay, 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. First question, have you ever had a moment Have you ever had a moment where you just one thought completely changed how you felt? So
Wow.
80% of people believe yes, they had that moment where they were feeling depressed, they were feeling in the crapper, and they got this great feeling of thought, and it totally changed their day. Um, Only 10% of people know, and only 3% of people, I'm not sure. I don't think it's possible. So, first question to you. You see the poll. Is there some
Yeah.
concept that a person could be feeling super down, super not good, and then one thought can completely change and get them into a whole different mood?
Well, I think most of us have had the experience of being really down, and then our best friend in the world comes to visit us. And we go, oh, what a surprise. It's so wonderful to see you. And suddenly we're experiencing a different feeling because our thinking changes. It's just like in a movie. If the film doesn't change, the movie doesn't change. But when we become fully present, you can't be thinking about something and fully present. And when we become fully present, we're built to start feeling better. So we can feel better. And that's coming from within us as well. So it's very interesting to me. Almost everybody, 88% of people, uh, uh, um, I think everybody has had the experience of when their thinking changes, they have a different feeling and experience.
Yeah.
That seems to demonstrate it.
Number two, which of these do you struggle with the most right now? 28% of people overthinking. The number one answer people are suffering from is stress or anxiety.
Oh, I know.
40%. 11% feeling disconnected. And the number two answer is self-doubt and fear.
Oh, I can totally understand this one. I was number one and two there. I was an overthinker, and the more education I got, the more thinking I got, and the more anxious and stress I felt. Because you can't a human being can't experience well-being, peace, happiness, or love while they're thinking. And when we become more fully present, we can start feeling better and having different kinds of feelings. That's thought too. We're back to thought. As our thinking changes, our feelings change. I just spent a week with my 5-year-old granddaughter. And most of the time, she's fully present and she's running around playing with her brother, having the best time. And then suddenly, at 5 years old, she'll have a real breakdown, it'll be like end of the world, low mood. And she'll be so upset. But you know what? At that age, she doesn't overthink. She doesn't keep she doesn't think about, why am I feeling this way? What do I do about it? What's wrong with me? Why did that person do that? How could they have done that? She comes back to the present moment, and within 5 or 10 minutes, she's completely over this major meltdown and she's back. Now, adults who are healthy do the same thing. They get upset. They have low moods. I do. Everybody I know does. Get upset, have low moods, have our little moments of meltdown, experiencing stress and anxiety. And if you don't understand how thought works, you'll keep thinking in a way that keeps that stress or anxiety going. If you understand how thought works, you get upset and you become like a little kid again. You come back to the present moment and go on with your life. And the thoughts that were upsetting you, you no longer are thinking or holding on to. So it's just like if you have a hot coal in your hand. If once you know where the pain comes from, you don't need any technique to let go of that hot coal. And it's the same with thought. If you hold on to thoughts that create stress and anxiety, it'll keep creating that painful experience as you become more conscious of how thought works. When you feel this kind of tension, stress, or upset, it's an invitation to let go of what you're thinking, not do more thinking like most adults do.
Amazing. Okay, let's go to the last poll question.
Yes.
The last one. Do you believe deep change is possible without changing your circumstances? 53% of people say yes, 41% of people maybe. I'm open. Like it's pretty even over there. Like some people believe you could without changing your circumstances. Some people, now let's use the example. Somebody feels that their job, their income, they're not making enough money, that unless they can make a lot more money, unless this amazing thing happens, my situation will never get better. So it's pretty split over there. What's your opinion on that?
Well, as our mind clears of thoughts that create tension, stress, or upset, it's very scientific. Very scientific. As our head clears of thoughts that create tension, stress, or upset, we'll start feeling better. Even if the circumstance hasn't changed. And if you feel better in a horrible circumstance, and trust me, there are horrible circumstances, the fact that your mind changes doesn't mean the circumstances change, but you will be, as we let go of thoughts that create tension, stress, and upset, human beings are tapped into this divine creative energy that we start getting new and fresh thinking that's helpful to us to navigate that very difficult circumstance. One of the ways we talk about this is intuition. People go, oh, I know what to do. And they become more intuitive when their mind is clear, when they're not caught up in stressful thinking. Another way of talking about this, people get more common sense. Common sense is a new and fresh thought created fresh by God in the moment when our minds are clear. And we go, oh, this makes sense. This is what I need to do. So the circumstance can still be the same, but as our mind changes, we see the circumstance differently, we feel different, and we get more creative in response to that. That's the very heart of problem solving. In problem solving, they say, think about a problem, but then you have to disengage from your computer and stop thinking to brainstorm. What is brainstorming? You get quiet and receptive so that God can bring us new and fresh thinking. It's exactly what we're doing in problem solving. If you never stop thinking, you don't access new and fresh thinking. And you need new and fresh thinking to solve any problem.
So before we get into live questions, let's just recap. What's the three main principles?
Okay, we're connected to God, divine mind.
Okay.
Divine consciousness allows us to be aware of life. Divine thought is what creates all the thinking that we have. And if we misuse this gift of thought, which is a tool, if we misuse the gift of thought, we suffer terribly. We can think about something negative all day long. They say people who are depressed spend 85% of their day thinking negative thoughts. And if any of us do that, we will just feel horrible. And with the people that I've worked with who are clinically depressed, as they begin to understand better the principle of thought, they start catching themselves caught up in all kinds of negative thinking. And when they realize that, they come back to the present moment, go on with their day. And thought is built to pass if you leave it alone. If you leave it alone, it'll pass. You don't have to do anything. You watch little kids, they get upset, they leave it alone, they get over it. That's called being resilient. Every one of us is built to be resilient. That's what I've loved learning about this, because I see people as connected to God and have the capacity to be open and receptive to God's uplifting nature and wisdom nature to guide us. Every person, no exception.
So many people have to learn how to use the tool of thinking. I mean, many people would love to know how to, stop that way of thinking and learn a new way of thinking because they've been in this for a long time, and just by saying just stop won't work.
No, it doesn't.
So they have to
I
learn.
tried that on myself. It didn't work.
So the question is, how do we learn how to use our thoughts, our thinking in a better
Well,
way?
look at all the things we've learned growing up. I mean, how quickly did we learn that if you touch something that's really hot, you're going to get burnt and it's going to be very painful? It did not take a long time to learn that. Once you realized my hand on a hot surface creates pain, very few adults that I've talked to, when I've asked them, why are you stressed? Why are you unhappy? Why are you feeling the way you're feeling? I've asked tens of thousands of people and nobody says, well, that's obvious. It's what I'm thinking right now. And if you don't know that your feeling is created from thought, how do you let go of it? So you're walking around with your hand on the hot stove, feeling pain, but have no idea where the pain's coming from.
Well, they might tell you, they're going to tell you their story. The reason why I feel the way I feel is because this happened to me. I want more money. I need to get married. I want to have kids.
They're going to throw at you the life circumstances that they're suffering from, and that's their story that they're telling themselves. And
Yes,
they feel depressed, sad, or fearful because of those stories. So how do you
yes.
get them out of that thought?
Everybody thinks, everybody is conscious, everybody is connected to this deeper mind, this deeper intelligence. So it's easy for me. I talk to people, and at a certain point, like learning anything, you have an insight. And once you have an insight, something that was difficult becomes easier. That's how learning happens. If you didn't know how to use a computer and I was explaining it to you and you said, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult, I can't do it. And then you go, oh, is that what you do? Is that how that works? Where human beings are built to have insights. So it's insights that help people learn how the principles work in their own lives. I talk to people that when they first hear this, they've been told their whole life, the world makes you unhappy. The world makes you happy. You have to look outside to stop what's making you unhappy, and you have to look outside to find something that will make you happy. That's what we've been taught. That's what I was taught. We're all taught that as we're growing up. But it's not scientific. You put 100 people into the most stressful situation you can imagine. And there's tons of research that shows this. You have 100 people in that stressful situation, something catastrophic happens. You're going to have 100 different responses because you have 100 different people. And there will be some people in that group, understandably, that feel totally overwhelmed and helpless. That could be any one of us if we think about things in a certain way. Many people, though, in a situation like that, feel fearful. That's understandable. If you have a fearful movie running in your head, you're going to have a fearful experience. But you'd be amazed at how many people in adverse situations become very present and calm. And they don't feel fear, panic, overwhelmed. They feel calm because that's what's in their mind. And then you always have people in horrific circumstances who become loving and compassionate. Now, people who even put their own lives at risk to save somebody else. It's the exact same circumstance, but you've got 100 different experiences depending on how people are thinking. Now, I'm not even saying you should feel good in those circumstances. I'm saying it's understandable, whatever you're thinking, you're going to feel. So if you're fearful, it lets you know that you're caught up in thinking that's creating that feeling. It's a gift. Thank God I feel fear. Thank God I feel stress. as like an alarm clock going off to let me know I'm holding on to these thoughts that are creating this feeling. If I let go of those thoughts, the feeling will change. If I don't let go of those thoughts, the feeling won't change.
Question is, how do you let go of those thoughts?
Well, if I put something too hot in your hand, you would not even ask me that question.
Correct. That's
It's
logical.
the same with this.
Simple.
If you realize in the moment, the only reason I'm feeling what I'm feeling is because I'm holding on to thoughts creating it, you won't ask me that question. As soon as a client that I have realizes I'm holding on to thoughts creating this feeling, they let go and they don't even ask me how to do it. They just come back to the present moment. Why would I keep thinking about this if it's making me feel this way? And they stop thinking about it and think about something else. They use their mind more wisely.
Okay.
They might say because it's a fact. Meaning, let's say in Israel, you have the husband went to war, a soldier, and
Yes,
it doesn't come back. That's very, very painful, and they sit,
yes.
and it's hard, and they're gonna say it's not my thought, it's a fact. It's like,
Well, the external world is the fact. How we experience the external world is a variable. Horrible things happen. I've already said that. Horrible. I spend an enormous amount of time working with people in war zones. And they find out that even though the war is going on, their state of mind is a variable depending on how they're thinking in that situation. And this is why we say if you're in a horrible situation, turn it over to God. That means let go of the thoughts that are burdening you and be open and receptive to letting God bring you something uplifting. And I've witnessed that happening hundreds and hundreds of times with people in war situations. And one time I was in a war situation with machine guns in my chest, bombs going off all around me, people being killed, shooting everywhere. I thought I was going to die and never see my wife and kids again. And I had a change in consciousness, and my fear went away, and I experienced great clarity and knew exactly what I needed to do to save myself and survive a week of being in a situation where I thought I was going to die. So I know it's possible because I've experienced it. I know it's possible for anyone to have a new thought. We're a thought away from what we're looking for, but we can't hold on to the old thinking and expect to get new thinking.
Let's get to some live questions. Okay, you're on.
Hi, Dr. Bettinger. Thank you for coming on. It's so nice to see you. This was just the introduction and everything we discussed was so powerful. I have I would say a one package question. First of all, you discussed about, the way to get there is slowing down. That's the first step. And so the first thing I have is, how do we actually do that? I notice, I just one thing I notice, all the psychologists or we had the people that discuss these type of things, they always speak very calmly. You're a prime example. I remember Dr. Jacob Ham, the transformative touch. They're always in the moment. How do we, I mean, an hour ago I had to do a lot of multitasking. I'm with three smartphones calling three people because they're not picking up and also just typing on the computer. I mean, my brain is firing in so many ways. And also like for overthinker, some people I had these type of experiences many years ago, but like we overthink it and then the intuition goes away. How do we balance that type of situation? That's my first part of my question. And the second question is just in general, I know you mentioned the divine light and and the connection between psychology and the divine. But why? I'm a religious Jew, and obviously I believe in God and everything, but there are people that don't. Like, why is this divine element so necessary to find this peace? Like, I mean, why can't someone find it if they don't believe in the divine? Or something like that.
Oh, these are great questions, Ben. And by the way, I really like your name. That's my
Thank
son's.
you. Oh boy, thank you.
Yeah, that's my son's name too. And I just spent time with my son. Well, you're asking two really wonderful questions. I wouldn't say quiet down or quiet your mind without what I would say first. I would say that second. I would say first, understand how your mind works better. And then stress will become your friend because it will let you know when you're misusing the tool of thought. The stress will let you know that you're overthinking. And if you realize that's true, then the second part, quiet down, makes sense. But it comes out of, you have to begin to see for yourself more clearly how your mind works. We're thinking all day long, and it's invisible, so we don't realize that whatever we're thinking is creating what we're feeling. And if we don't realize that, we'll think, well, I'm feeling stressed because I have all this multitasking to do. I feel stressed because I have so many things to do. I've worked with CEOs of companies that have unbelievable amount of things to do, but they start understanding how their mind works, and they begin to let go of more and more of the thoughts that allow them to quiet down, that allow them to be more present. And then they begin to learn whenever we're present is when we're most open to getting new and fresh thinking.
Yes.
That's my quick answer to your first question, Ben, that it's hard. It would be almost cruel for me. I was a worrier and I worried all the time, which meant I thought about things in a way that made me anxious. And I hadn't, even being a psychologist, I was very anxious until I learned about these principles. And if somebody came up to me and said, well, just calm down, relax, just quiet down, I'd say, but I have so many things I need to think about. I'm just thinking, if I don't think about these things, nothing will get done and I won't do anything because I hadn't learned about wisdom yet. I hadn't learned that when I'm present and quiet, I don't become dumb, I become wiser. I'm better able to do many tasks when my mind is present and in the present moment. But I had to learn that for myself. It didn't help if somebody told me that. I had to understand better through insight how the mind works. And then things really started to change for me, Ben. Oh my gosh, I said, oh, I'm feeling stressed. Good, this is an invitation to wisdom. I worked with one man from Jerusalem who is very religious, and he could not believe that stress was created from thought. He thought he had to be thinking about what he was thinking about. And I didn't know. I had talked to him about thought, and he hadn't had an insight yet about it. So it seemed very difficult for him. And I got really quiet. And this is how our minds work. If you get quiet and receptive, a new and fresh thought will be given to you. It's a gift. And I said to him for the first time, Yitzi, do you know that stress is a call to prayer? And he got it. Suddenly his stress, he hated his stress and was trying to get rid of it. And suddenly he saw his stress as an invitation to prayer, and it was a good thing. It was helpful to him. He was becoming more and more prayerful, open, and receptive to divine influence.
Okay, let's go to the next live question. Hi, you're on.
Hi, I'm Hani. So I really love what's being shared, and especially now at this part of the year where I'm a teacher and there's extra stress to end off the year and all the good stuff. I also am making decisions for next year. I find that on the one hand, stress is kind of pointing me in the direction of like what needs to be thought about, like what's something that I'm maybe missing, and
Yes.
and I feel like not stressing is basically, to me, it feels like disassociating, like I'm disconnecting from what real life is happening around me, and I want to be in that space or just disconnect and think about nothing and kind of go on vacation, but it feels like I can't afford to do that because then I'm going to miss out on the details that need to be looked at, or I'm going to not make the decisions on time, stuff like that. So that's what came up for me when you were sharing about this, like how can I?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for what you're doing and being a teacher.
Thanks.
That's a very, very important position. I started my career teaching high school for 6 years. The reason I got into getting interested in psychology was because I looked younger than the kids I was teaching, and so many kids started coming to me with their problems. And I started getting passionate about learning what can people learn that will help them have an easier time of life. Your question is when I get very, very much, and you say sometimes your stress helps you to know what to think about. Well, if you're thinking in a way that creates stress, and then your stress points out something that would be helpful for you to think about, there's nothing wrong with thinking about things and using our intellect. What a beautiful gift. But if we use it to create stress, it keeps us from being at our best. And if we use that gift to use our intellect wisely, thinking about something we need to think about can be very helpful until it's not. And so we're built perfectly. We're designed perfectly. If the thinking we're doing creates stress, if we let go of that, we don't daydream and become passive. We become clear. If you're driving a car and you start getting rain on your windshield and turn on the windshield wiper, you're not you don't stop driving. You now have clarity that makes it easier to proceed. So when people have mental clarity, they do better. They become more creative, more resourceful, more able to think about problems in a way that's creative and helpful. When people are stressed, when I worked in companies, stress was one of the biggest problems. And people, extremely brilliant people, engineers, when they were stressing out, they did not perform well. And as they learned about thought and began to have less stress and began to have more understanding of how wisdom brings us the thinking that we need to guide us through difficult challenges, they began to have less and less stress. They became more productive, made better decisions, communicated better, and it didn't take that personal toll on them, so it improved their family life as well.
You're saying just try it out, just clear your mind when you're stressed and see what happens.
See what happens. Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. Again, I've worked with so many teachers, and I know exactly the kind of things you're dealing with. And there's an end of the year and all these things to take that you're responsible for, and you're wanting to do the best you can for your students. You're having to work with colleagues. And as your level of stress diminishes, don't take my word for it. You find out if it doesn't help you become even a better teacher than you already are.
Thanks.
So I like your idea. Just find out. I was afraid that if I stopped doing so much thinking, I would be passive and wouldn't do anything. And I became more present and more creative. But I had to find that out too, because I asked the same question you did when I was learning this.
Thank you.
And when you
Oh.
teach this concept, do you tell people like practically how to do, let's say, a mind dump, write down, sit down, write down everything that you're worried about, or different ideas, or maybe deep breathing, or do you give them like practical skills to actually do it? Or you wait till they understand the concept that you're teaching and hopefully they get it?
Usually it happens pretty quick when I talk with people. Like if I talked with Ben for half an hour, Johnny for half an hour,
Mm-hmm.
we're built to have insights. And so as people ask questions and we talk and then people start going, oh, this just makes sense. We're feeling what we're thinking. Well, that makes sense. And it's also scientific, by the way. You can't feel any feeling you're not thinking. You can't think sad and feel happy. You can't think happy and feel sad. It's moment to moment, whatever we're thinking, we're going to feel.
So I can choose my thoughts.
Pardon me?
I could choose my thoughts.
Well, I'd rather have God choose my thoughts so I can choose to let go of the ones that get in the way of God bringing me the thoughts that are helpful. And then I don't need a technique. I need God.
So when I find myself feeling sad and thinking of a thought that's making me feel sad, all I have to do is say, I don't want to think that.
Well, you can see if that thought helps you or if that thought doesn't help you. When I started going, like when I first learned this, I would go, oh, it's thought, Dicken, drop it, drop it. Don't think that thought.
Let go, let go.
Oh my God. And that thinking stressed me out terribly. It would be like me walking up to a kid and saying, don't feel that, don't feel that, feel something different. When I stopped thinking for a moment, I started feeling better. When I let go of trying to tell myself what to do, that's the let go and let God. This is
What I
this
hear
is
is stop thinking that you shouldn't think that way, meaning allow the thought to be there. Don't try to fix it or push
I
it
want to I want
away.
to get deeper. There's a book, a famous concept, right, called Letting Go by Hawkins. And his concept is you have a feeling of anger, you have a feeling of depression, you have a feeling of sadness. You embrace the feeling, don't put any thoughts to it. Just
yeah,
don't tie it into what we do is we get a feeling. We feel
yes.
sad, we feel angry, and right away we go, oh, you know why I'm upset? Because that guy, you're upset, nothing to do with the guy. We use that feeling, we tie it in. So no judgmental, no like tying into stories, and just let the feeling pass through your body. And within a period of time, it relieves itself slowly. So what's your thought on that? Is that the theory that we're still going with, or we're like, no, it's the thought is bad.
Thank you, Usher. That's beautiful. That's beautiful because I would never want people to feel bad about feeling bad. That's more judgmental thinking. When I have a low mood or when I feel bad, I want to be compassionate and understanding. And I know that if I leave it alone, if I don't hold on to those thoughts, I'm going to feel what I'm feeling, but it'll pass. That's what my granddaughter does. She feels her feelings, but she doesn't think into them. She doesn't analyze them. She doesn't judge them. She feels it and she's over it very quickly. When my daughter was turning 14, she had a massive insight about the power of thought, that we're connected to this power of thought. And she went from being a very dramatic, emotional, always upset, always thinking the world was making her unhappy, to suddenly she was like a 35-year-old poised, confident woman. Her posture changed. Her face changed. She looked like a mature woman rather than a struggling teenager. Every one of our friends noticed the change in her and came up and said, my God, what has happened to Nina? So Nina became my teacher. It used to be I'd come home from work and she'd run up and say, Dad, what are you learning? Now she'd come home from school and I go, Nina, what are you learning? And she would talk about, I can't stay upset for more than 10 minutes because I know it's me holding on to those angry thoughts. Why would I do that, Dad? It makes me miserable. And she was discovering that when she understood where her feelings came from, she had so much less painful thinking, so much more presence, so much happier, so much lighter. I worked with a man he was the head of a company and he'd been in the military, and I came up with this metaphor. If you have a backpack that you're trying to carry up a hill that you're assaulting, and it has 100 pounds of stones, rocks in it. And if you could take out 60 of those stones and have only 40 pounds, it'd be a huge difference to you in your life. If you could take out more than that, if your head really clears, you can be stress-free for longer and longer periods of time. And he said, if you can teach my men that I work with on my team how to be aware of the fact that we're the ones burdening ourselves with holding thought and be free of that so that they can do their job with less stress. Because right now they're making terrible mistakes, they're stressing out, they're arguing, they're not getting along well. And I went in and I taught them what I'm teaching you. And before you know it, they were working like a well-oiled machine. They were really collaborating and working well together. Most people don't realize the amount of thought burden they're holding on to. I didn't, and I was a psychologist, but no one was teaching what I learned from Sydney Banks. 100% of what you feel is created from thought, not circumstance. That doesn't mean there aren't horrible circumstances.
Is this like basically the similar concept of Viktor Frankl, of that whole, like he went through so much hell, but
Viktor Frankl was someone I read and loved that book. I read and reread it, but I couldn't incorporate it in my life because I was trying to change my attitude about life, because he says the greatest freedom any human being can have is you can choose the attitude you approach life. Well, as long as I felt like my work was causing me stress, trying to choose an attitude of not being stressed didn't help me. But once I realized my work wasn't causing me stress, my thinking was, then I finally understood what Viktor Frankl was talking about because I was experiencing it.
You're saying it's not your circumstance that's causing you the feeling. It's not your circumstance. Everybody has
You can be in the circumstance and 10 minutes later feel something different than you're feeling, and it's the same circumstance. It doesn't mean circumstances aren't important. When I get quiet, my wisdom guides me toward how to move toward healthier and healthier circumstances. It guided me through a war zone for a week until I got to a better circumstance. That's
now,
what wisdom does. That's why it's called wisdom.
but now we have to teach how to, like you're saying, to get that fresh thought, because we're used to thinking one way for 20, 30 years.
Oh,
For example, let's talk about somebody that can't pay his bills, a scarcity mindset. So this is a certain way of thinking, and it's subconscious. It could be very deep. And you're saying it has nothing to do with your money in the account. There's nothing to do with your job. It's not your circumstance. It's the way your thought about money, your thought about the ideas that come into your head. Nothing to do with the outside circumstance. So he would say, okay, fine. Now, how do I think different? How do I change? How do I allow the fresh thought? Well, what is the fresh thought?
Have you ever had a nightmare and woken up from it?
Yeah,
What was your reaction when you woke up from the nightmare?
relieved.
Yeah. Does it matter how long you were having the nightmare when you woke up?
No,
Spiritual awakening can change someone's feeling instantly.
I
From
have to know how
chronic
to,
stress, I've spent my life thinking fearful thoughts about money. That's a daymare.
how do we wake up?
That's yes. Now we're asking the right questions. I love this. That's what I wanted to know. Menachem, that was my question. How do I wake up? I want to wake up. I want to wake up. And what I started to experience was that when I lived in fearful, anxious thoughts I was 42 before I learned what I'm teaching you. So it had been going on. I had been in the nightmare of my thinking it was reality rather than a thought-created reality. It wasn't reality. It was a thought-created reality I was living in. And I meet Sydney Banks, and he starts for the first time saying, you're connected to divine wisdom, and it's only your thinking that keeps you from receiving that wisdom as feelings that uplift and new and fresh thinking. That will be given to you freely if your mind is open and receptive to it, but you won't be able to receive that while you're thinking fearful thoughts.
So waking up from a daymare of having scarcity thoughts is by saying it's not true,
That's not true.
and
We
God has
weren't born
abundance.
with those
The
fearful
world
thoughts.
is full of abundance, and that's it. Change. That's it. The one
I've
insight.
seen it. It can be gradual change or it can be sudden change. For me, it's most often been gradual. A lot of my clients, they keep learning more and more spiritual teaching, and then gradually it starts becoming real for them in their own experience, and change happens. Change happens, or we wouldn't study scripture. Change happens. We're built to have insights, but you can't think your way to an insight. So if you're listening to a spiritual teaching, or even listening to me talk, if you're thinking hard, you won't have any new insights. To be a good student, you have to temporarily set aside your thinking and really listen. And you can't think and listen at the same time. Just listen. Just listen. Our minds get quieter. Just being present. Just knowing it's a little bit, ego is the belief that I can do a better job at figuring out this problem than God can, so let me keep thinking about it. If I let go of ego, then I say, okay, God, bring me new and fresh. I'm open. I'm receptive. You'll be amazed. You'll be amazed. But you have to trust what comes.
Wow.
See
And,
where it takes you.
and in the opening, you mentioned that you can't feel peace, love, and happiness while thinking.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. I'm with my wife, and she'd say, Dicken, you're not present. You're always preoccupied. And I said, I'm an adult and I have a lot of responsibilities and I have a lot to think about, because I had the assumption if I wasn't thinking, I wouldn't be responsible. I wouldn't be an adult, and I'd be a slackard. And she would say, but you're not listening. And I'd say, I am listening. I can multitask while I listen. I can think about 10 things and I can still hear your words and tell you what you said. She said, that's not listening. I said, yeah, but I got A's in my class on listening in college because I could memorize the right information and give it back. Now, when I started learning the principles, one of the first things my wife noticed was I started becoming more present and a better listener. Do you know? And then I started seeing the connection of, while I'm thinking, I don't feel a great love for my wife. And when I'm present, I start falling in love with her over and over again. Oh my gosh. I said, I can't believe it. Can't believe it. Let go and let God means let go of fear and you fill up with love. But I had to find that out. You let go of judgmental thoughts, you'll feel peace of mind. You let go of thoughts and you become more present, so your senses come alive. That's what happiness is. It's what joy is. It's what joy is. And then your mind quiets down and your mind is open and you're fully present, and you'll start feeling closer to whoever's in front of you. You'll feel closer to your friends. You'll feel closer. I felt closer to my kids. Felt closer to my wife. That's what happens when we fall in love. We get a free experience of what it's like to be out of our thinking, our judgmental thinking, our negative thinking, and being present, and we fall in love. I just didn't know you could do that over and over and over again. I've been married 56 years. Met my wife 59 years ago. I just didn't know that it was possible to have such deep feelings of love for someone for so long. But I can't experience those feelings of peace, happiness, or love if I'm chronically overthinking. I can't. It's impossible. Do you know what happened to teenage kids during the pandemic? As many of them started spending more time on phones and on the screen, and they did a lot of thinking about what they were seeing, and it was happening very fast. And then enormous number of kids got more anxious and more depressed. And when we've gone into schools and taught the principals in schools, and kids begin to see how so much of their thinking is creating the stress. It's not their situation. It's very empowering. Very, very empowering. Feel more peaceful. Feel more present. Feel more creative. Feel more compassionate. I started walking into a room and I could see people who were caught up in thought, and I said, no wonder they're suffering. They're innocent. They don't realize they're doing that. They don't. You can ask people, why do you feel the way you do? And you'll be amazed. People will tell you all the theories they've heard through the years. The principles are not theories, they're universally true. Every human being thinks. Every human being is conscious. Every human being is connected to a greater intelligence. No exceptions. I can go anywhere in the world and talk. It's not a theory. It's not a concept. It's pointing toward qualities of the divine, to be infinitely creative. Everything we see was created, not by us. And if we invented something, it was because the thought to create it came to us.
Dicken, let's go to the next live question, okay?
Please. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Justin. You've been waiting patiently.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so funny because about a week ago, a friend of mine told me about the three principles, and I've been like obsessively learning about it. So it's just very,
Good timing.
yeah, incredible timing.
Oh, that's amazing.
So funny. And I had just like seen you on a video. So thank you for bringing him on, and it's been incredible learning about it. I've been trying to wrap my head around it the last week, but not overthinking it.
Yeah,
It's like,
good.
I can't figure out if I get it or if I don't get it. Is it a type of thing that you get better at as you practice it? It's a skill?
Well, you get better at it because you have more insights. It's self-reinforcing. Like sometimes my teacher, Sidney Banks, he's no longer with us. God bless him. What an incredible man. He would say things like, going in, if you're learning this, don't try too hard to figure it out, because you're trying to discover the very nature of how God creates by experiencing it directly. So he'd say things like, go and enjoy yourself. And when you realize you're not enjoying yourself, if at that moment you realize what you're feeling is connected to what you're thinking, it'll help you in that moment. It'll help you in that moment. You'll see, if I keep thinking this way, I'll keep feeling this way. If I wake up out of this dream into the present moment, that thinking will fall away naturally. It does all the time anyways. If I followed any one of you around, I would see times when you would get present to walk across a room, to say hello to a friend, to drive your car. And at that moment, your thinking would pass, whatever you were holding on to. It would start flowing again. So you just start seeing more and more from your own experience that it pays off to let go and let something greater bring you feelings that uplift and bring you new and fresh thinking.
Why do we have such a hard time with that in our day and age? Like to be present, to stop thinking. It seems like it's like a real challenge for a lot of us, including myself. Um, and also I feel like sometimes if I try to stop, I'll just kind of be empty. Like I'm not going to get this major insight. It'll just be, eventually I'll start thinking again, but I'm not going to necessarily connect to some great, voice of God within me.
Justin, do you drive a car?
Yes.
When you're driving a car, in order to drive, you have to become pretty present. People who overthink while they're driving get into accidents. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're present when you're driving a car and you're going really fast with an extremely heavy object past other people going really fast with really heavy objects. And the whole time your hands are moving like this. Are you using your intellect to figure out how far to turn the steering wheel each moment?
No.
That's wisdom. That's this deeper intelligence. When we get present, we don't become dumb and stupid. Wisdom takes over. So I like to say, wisdom has our back. When we become present, people do not be, if daydreaming is not being present, that's still thinking about something and you're not present. When we become present, we're making life and death decisions because we have a trust that wisdom will guide us. And the more you start trusting that wisdom, the more you'll see, why would I hold on to thought when I let go? Not only do I become more present, but wisdom takes over. Wisdom guides me. This is what Viktor Frankl found out interviewing 60,000 people who had been in concentration camps. There were people there who got present and said, I can't afford the luxury of holding on to thoughts that sap my strength and make me mean and die unhappy. And they would let go and surrender to God, and then something beautiful would come through them. They would experience love and compassion, which is our true nature, not fear.
Okay, and then I just wanted to ask you, it seems like, I have two more questions I want to put into one, if that's okay, but it seems like a lot of the thinking on changing I wanted to ask about changing habits from two standpoints. One is, it seems like a lot of the self-help books on changing habits have to do with changing your identity, like Atomic Habits, that you have to, when you identify with yourself in a different way, that will, then the behavior will behave, the better behaviors, the better self will follow. I'm curious how you feel like this relates to the three principles. And then also that it seems like there's a lot of habits that we develop, negative habits I'm thinking of, that it's almost like there's no thought. it's like our body can get certain negative habits that it seems like it's almost automatic. It's ingrained in the body. And I'm wondering if how you think that the three principles can change that or no? Because I feel like I have certain habits that it's almost impossible to identify a thought, and it's just like almost like the body has a mind of its own.
Yeah, you don't have to identify a thought to stop holding on to it. If you have a bag of garbage, you don't have to rip it open and look at everything in it and label it before you let it go. You don't. When I feel fearful, I don't know the content of my thinking, but I know that it's holding thought, because when I let go of it and come back to the present, when I just come back to the present moment, forget about letting go of it. When I come back to the present moment and don't keep thinking about what I was thinking about, I feel better. I have less anxiety, less stress. I don't have to know what the thoughts were to let go of them. So you don't have to examine the content of your thinking. Before I learned the principles, I've spent years trying to examine the content of my thinking before I could let it go. That is so much hard work, and it's impossible.
But the body wants that negative behavior, though.
Well, the behavior is is the caboose on the train. It's not the engine. Thought is the engine. So when your thinking changes, behavior changes. If your thinking doesn't change, your behavior won't. That's what a habit is. You have the same thoughts, creating the same feeling, creating the same behavior. Unless you understand the nature of thought, if thought doesn't change, your behavior is not going to change. If thought changes, I guarantee your behaviors will change. If the engine on the train goes in a different direction, the caboose is going to follow.
So the key is to just let go, like if the person to identify that behavior as it's beginning, and then just try to let go and try to have a different train of thought.
Well, I wouldn't tell anybody to try, because trying is, you're going to find out, is thinking that creates stress. Oh, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to be present. I'm trying to drop thought. That's just stressful thinking. No one needs a lesson in it. The only thing we can't do as a human being is be present. It doesn't take effort. If I followed you around, I could show you 100 times during the day you get present, and it's not because you're trying. You just become present. But when I thought the world made me stressed, I had a lot to think about. When I realized it's the thinking I'm doing about the world that creates stress, I had less to think about. The same with habits. You can't think your way to you can't through effort think your way out of a habit. You just realize the thinking you're doing that creates the feeling that keeps the habit going. Remember, our thought content comes before our feeling content comes before our behaviors. If you quiet down, you touch a space where new thought can be created. So you change your thinking, you're going to have different feeling, and it's going to lead to different behaviors. So I've worked with people who have had habits their whole life, and as they start realizing how much stress is behind a habit, when they let go of the thinking creating stress, there's no need for the habit.
Okay, let's go to the next. We have so many live questions. Trying to get some more in.
Okay,
you're on.
Hello,
thanks,
thank you.
Justin. Sorry.
Hi, thank you so much. I had a question about, when we're stressed, right, our sympathetic nervous system is active, and right, this is how we learn our
Yes.
functions, and then our, brain goes into survival mode, and so our heart starts beating faster, and our cognition changes in that we're focused on survival, we're feeling threats, any incoming signals are processed differently. And so how does it work to just switch that thought process over when you're fighting the physiology of, what's going on practically? And is there some kind of like self-talk one would use to break out of that? Like how would one just snap out of that?
Let me just repeat the question, maybe add on a little bit, because actually it's a good question. You're saying when you're amygdala, when you feel like that fight or flight mode, whether it's real or not, right? Some people feel it because they're actually in a situation, some people not. Like, how do we just say, okay, this is a bad thought, this is going to lead to bad places, right? Somebody's like ruminating this negative thought. What's the technique at the end of the day?
There is no technique. You don't need a technique to take your hand off a stove. You don't need a technique to take your hand off thinking that's creating your pain. Before I learned the principles, I studied techniques and I did 4 hours of meditation every night. I did affirmation notebooks. I did cognitive work where I would study thought content and trying to make it positive. I did all kinds of work. Anytime somebody would say, here's the technique you need to use, I was only sleeping 4 hours a night because I was doing techniques all day and I was preoccupied with working on myself. And after I learned the principles, I let go of every technique and I just started looking in the direction of understanding better how the mind works. And without techniques, I became more present, more lighthearted. My wife said, wow, I've got my husband back. He's not working on himself all the time with techniques. He's just present. And I wasn't using techniques. I was gaining an insightful understanding that made life easier. I would get asked by hospitals to come and talk to doctors about how to deal with people who have anxiety attacks. This is in response to the question, a wonderful question about how our thinking can change our biochemistry really quickly. You have a fearful thought, the long and the short of it is produces all kind of adrenaline, which if I gave any human being a shot of adrenaline, they would have all these uncomfortable symptoms. They would be uncomfortable unless you were fighting for your life. So there was a time in human development when we wanted to be flooded with adrenaline, when we felt fear because we had to fight for our life against wild animals or against warring nations, and we had to run as fast as we could to escape, fight or flight. So it's built into us when we have fearful thoughts to have strong adrenal responses, which change our physical body very quickly. When I work with people who have panic attacks, I teach them exactly what I'm talking about tonight. Anxiety or fear is an ordinary human feeling. It can't hurt you. We all feel it. But we can keep thinking in a way that keeps creating more fearful thinking. So most people, when they start having a panic attack, for example, go, oh no. Now that's a thought. And when you go, oh no, I don't want to feel this, you're going to start flooding your body with more adrenaline because you're saying danger, danger, you're going to die. You could have the thought, I'm dying. That thought floods you with adrenaline. You could have the thought, I don't want to feel this way. I shouldn't feel this way. What's wrong with that I'm feeling this way? You could have the thought, it's just thought. What's wrong with me? Why I shouldn't have to feel this way. And all of that thinking is creating more fear and more adrenaline. But once people start understanding, I can't think my way out of fear. And fear is an invitation to the now. It's only when we become present does our thinking naturally flow and change. We're built for that to happen. You don't do it. When we get present, our minds start quieting down on their own. It's like having a snow globe. If you're shaking it by trying and thinking, it'll stay clouded. When you set it down and leave it alone, it's built to settle out. Our minds are like that. They'll settle out. They'll quiet down. when we're present. And so I've had people who have, one woman called me up and said, I've been having panic attacks every day for years and years in my life, and I can't leave the house. And I said, okay, I'll talk with you on the phone for a few weeks. And we talked 3 times. And then she flew up to see me and spent 4 days with me. We met twice a day. And I'm teaching her about how thought works, about our connection to well-being, how we have perfect well-being inside because we're spiritual beings. You can't be damaged. You can't be hurt spiritually. We can cover over our spirit by holding on to thoughts that create our tension, stress, and upset, by overthinking, overanalyzing. But that's just a misunderstanding. And she left and never had another panic attack again. I would train doctors in emergency rooms how to help people rather than the only thing wrong. Most of my clients who went to the hospital were told there was something terribly wrong in their childhood, and they would probably have to spend years going back into painful memories of the past in order to get better, and then given lots of medication. It doesn't have to be that hard. Changing doesn't have to be painful. To wake up from a nightmare is a relief. It's not painful.
Sounds like a dream. Like that it would actually happen. And actually, my next question leading into it was actually about trauma, because everything we're learning these days about trauma is how the body holds on to it. And the only way, we have to like rewire from the event on, get that system rewired by, whatever modalities people use to release it, let's say. So this is saying, forget all of that, just change your thought patterns and move forward. Like that's not needed.
It's an evolution in psychology that was bound to happen because it's more scientific. Every science evolves. I'm glad you brought this up about trauma, and I'll give you a very, very brief answer to this. Trauma is an event that happens that's horrible. Trauma is the event that happens that's horrible. We're not experiencing trauma right now. We're sitting talking in our houses, and we no longer have trauma. What do we have? We have memories brought with us from that trauma. I have not met a single human being that did not have painful events in their childhood and early life. I have not met a single human being that doesn't have painful memories. And how memory works scientifically is that it is triggered by association. So a certain smell could trigger a memory. A certain sound, a certain state of mind that you drop into could trigger memories. A certain feeling, a certain noise, anything can, by association, the memory is activated. If you don't know that that's thought, you may have a misunderstanding that right now, sitting in my house, I'm experiencing trauma. I'm a victim of trauma. No, you're not. You're a human being having a memory which is normal. You're gonna have memory activated. I do. Everybody I know at times have memories activated. If you don't understand that it's thought creating the feeling you're having, you'll think it's something in your past and you'll feel helpless and feel like a victim. If you know the memory is your own present moment thought, you'll still feel that feeling, but you'll be like my little granddaughter. You'll let go of it so you can become present and go play. And when it does, the memory passes and you no longer are having that experience. The next time that memory comes up, if you let it go, it won't be as strong. The next time, not as strong. This is how healing happens psychologically. My son at 9 years old was hit by a car. He had incredible painful memory from that event. So every time I went with my son to cross the street, he was terrified. That's memory. That's not trauma. It's memory. What's memory? It's thought in a moment. And because he didn't think there was something wrong, I would just say, okay, we'll wait until you feel safe and then we'll cross. And sometimes we'd stand at a street and wait for a very long time until we felt safe. No cars coming. And then we'd cross. Next time, the cars could be coming a mile away. Next time, half a mile away. Next time, a quarter of a mile away. To this day now, he can cross the street without being scared, but he still knows enough to look both ways because he learned his lesson. That's how people get over painful memory. We're built to do that. We're built to get over painful memory. If we understand how this works, we can let our painful experiences, we can feel them. That was Usher talked about this earlier. We can feel the pain, but no, it's normal to have a feeling like this. It's thought created. It's not wrong. It's not bad. Just allow it to flow through and go on with our day. And before you know it, you're feeling better. That's how people get over traumas naturally. God designed us to be able to get over trauma. It's built into us to be able to do that. But we can't do it while we're caught up in thought.
Many people might not be ready to let go.
Well, I've not anybody who wakes up in the morning and saying, I'd rather suffer all day.
I'm saying because it's subconscious, they're holding on to it for a reason.
Yes.
It's their
It's
life. And just by
yes, you're right. It's a misunderstanding they have. When people misunderstand, I held on to a lot of my fear because I thought holding on would protect me from the world making me feel worse. So I was defended. Once I learned wisdom is my protector, then I could let go of my defenses. I wouldn't become defenseless. I would become wiser. This is why they say if you're in a crisis situation, no one says, think yourself into a stressful frenzy. They'll say, stay calm. Why is that? You have greater access to guidance by wisdom. Much greater.
Dicken, let's go to the next live question, okay?
Yes.
Aura.
Hi, thank you so much to all of you. So I'm wondering, I was hearing about your granddaughter, and it's really truly a blessing, and God should continue to bless you and many people this way when a kid is able to do that. But there are some kids who, whether they're diagnosed or not, have a much greater I don't know if you would call it natural, meaning from the things that you're saying that it's not natural, but meaning they're kids and they tend to not pass through feelings so easily and to get very spiraled into thoughts for a much longer amount of time. So since you can't say to that kid, stop thinking, be present, how can we help those kids? And they recognize, like, right, we might, like, I heard from what you were teaching that part of this process is not judging the negative feelings and letting them come and knowing that they will go, like rain comes and it'll go, and just being able to be like higher than that. And with a child though, like they know that there are negative ramifications of their spirals. They know people look at them weird. They know it affects their relationships. They know that they're not supposed to hit and punch and whatever, but yet they still do it in the moment. So how do we help kids in that like state?
Well, I work with a lot of kids. My heart goes out to kids. I love kids, and I have friends all over the world who are going into schools to teach these principles to very young kids, and they're getting remarkable adults because kids learn this really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have so much to unlearn. They learn very quickly. And I'll give an example. I get a call from the principal of a school who says, I have an 8-year-old boy, 7-year-old boy, who's the most dangerous, troubled kid we've ever had in this school. And we think he should be taken out of public school and put into a private institution for emotionally disturbed kids. But before we do that, would you meet with him? And I said, well, how's he so dangerous? And they said, he's the biggest kid in his class and he's angry all the time. And recently his father was caught physically abusing him every single day. And so they're getting help for the father, and we need someone to work with this child. He's very traumatized. And I said, well, what does he do? And he said, well, he's bigger than kids, so he gets angry all the time and he blames other kids for why he's angry. And then he pushes them up against the wall, he hits them, he gave a kid a concussion, and worst of all, he bites until he draws blood. So we have to hire a teacher to stand next to him all day long to protect him and to protect the kids. And would you work with him? And the first session, this boy runs into my office, runs across the room, throws open my desk drawer, throws everything out, knocks over an antique lamp and breaks it. That's my introduction. And I say, hey, you must be, we'll use a familiar name. You must be Ben. Come over here, Ben. I want to show you something. And I grab this. I keep it to remind me, this kid taught me, he was one of my teachers. What I learned working with him was, it was a blessing. I said, do you know what this is? And he says, no. And I said, it's a vertebrae. It's a bone. It's a fossil. Do you know what a fossil is? And he did. And I said, you have these in your body too. You have a lot of these. He says, no, I don't. I said, well, they're smaller. I said, here, let me. Now, you see what's happening while I'm talking to him, he's becoming more and more present.
Mm-hmm.
He's calming down. Before you know it, he's sitting down on the floor with me and we're talking. And I'm just getting to know him. And oh my gosh, he just opened up and we talked and we were laughing. And at one point, not that session, because that session I just wanted to help him feel comfortable being with me. And I met with him again quite soon because it was pretty difficult
Dire.
situation. Yes. And I said, I remembered when I was a kid, we would take a ball and throw it in a circle of kids, and you'd set a timer, and whoever was holding on to it, we called it hot potato. And if you were holding on to it when the timer went off, you were burnt and eliminated from the game, and you kept going until one person was left. He says, you mean time bomb? It's a bomb. Set the timer. When it goes off, it blows up and you're out of the game. I said, oh, well, okay, time bomb. I said, when someone throws that to you, what do you do with it? And he didn't say anything. He just showed me. He'd catch it and then both hands throw it away immediately to someone else. And I said, I know you like to cook out. I know you like kosher hot dogs. If I was stupid enough to reach in the fire and pull out a hot coal and throw it to you, what would you do with it? He did the same thing, threw it away. I said, that's a lot like our angry thoughts. If you hold on to angry thoughts too long, you're going to get burnt or blow up. I saw that little 7-year-old, the light bulb go off over his head. I saw him have an insight. I was honored to witness it happening to him. Often it happens not in my office, it happens later, but it happened right there in front of me. At the end of that week, I get a call from the principal and said, "What did you do to that kid?" I didn't do anything to him. I told him he had perfect well-being inside and that his only problem was he was getting caught up in and holding on to angry thoughts. But how did that change him? I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "He hasn't been in a fight all week. Not once." As a matter of fact, we see him start to get angry, but he gets over it really quickly. "What did you do to him?" I said, "No, not me, God. I didn't do that." His own connection to the divine did that. He started letting go of the thoughts that was blocking his own common sense. I could tell you stories like that all day long. They're not always as quick and as dramatic. The next session, that kid came in to see me and he said, "Dicken, would you work with my father?" I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "My father doesn't understand this. He doesn't know where anger comes from." So here's a boy who is beaten daily by his father, going from rage and helplessness to being empowered and compassionate. Compassionate. He had compassion for his father. "Would you help my father? He doesn't understand where feelings come from." Kids are very incredible learners because they're open to insights.
So what I'm understanding is what you're suggesting is to talk to them about how it works and wait or pray for them to kind of have that insight. Not in the moment of the heat.
That'd be very powerful. And you wouldn't want to say anything that I've said. You'd want to wait until you saw this being true and helpful for you. And then all you'd have to do is share with kids what you had learned was helpful. See, I was sharing with this kid what I had learned about letting go of angry thoughts or fearful thoughts and how it came out of understanding that that was what was creating my feeling. It wasn't a technique. It just, I had no idea I was holding thought, and that's the primary source of my suffering. We're not taught that. We're not taught you're a divine being, you're a spiritual being, you have perfect well-being inside of you, and it gets covered over when you hold on to negative thought. Now we're teaching that to kids. And pretty soon the kids become the teachers. They're sharing their stories and helping other kids.
Thank you.
Or you're a delight. I wish you well. Thank you. Thank you. That is a soft spot for kids. Those the two things I told my daughter when she was 16, before you leave home, if you start really seeing deeply two things, you'll do well as an adult. If you see that holding thought creates the tension, stress, and upset that you experience, that'll help you all through your life, no matter what's going on. And the second thing, if you begin to see that as you understand how this works, you'll start trusting more and more that you're connected to this deeper intelligence. And you'll let go and quiet down so that you can feel better. And when you feel better, you'll have all the common sense you need to deal with difficulties. It's God-given. I said, I want you to see more and more deeply those two things. And boy, my kids are doing well now. My son, who struggled through high school with ADHD, is now a co-owner of 7 restaurants. My daughter is a remarkable mother and very involved in schools, and she's done work on creating energy efficient buildings and talked internationally, and both of them happy, loving, delightful parents, and they're sharing what they've learned with their kids. And it passes on generation to generation. My father would have loved this. He died at 57 of a heart attack because of stress. They would have loved this. It would have changed the trajectory of his life, because I worked with a lot of men since then, and I was that man at one point. I would have died early of stress-related problems.
No question, if we go relieve the stress in our minds, we will live a much more healthier life.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to the next live question. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, listening to GK earlier as a sort of a segue to the idea that there's, those of us that just spent a lot of life surviving. There's trauma, but there's also, I guess, I'm thinking of the kissing cousin to stress, which is depression. Or how do you keep, you mentioned earlier, it's easy to ruminate, but how do you keep your thoughts from spiraling to something that can truly be irrational? Or even it just happened to be this evening. I texted somebody. I'm trying to get a ride to a wedding, and she didn't answer right away. So I'm immediately thinking of rejection, because I grew up around a lot of, so I thought, oh, she doesn't like, this person never met me or anything, but I'm assuming they don't like me or want anything to do with me. She later texted me to say she's at a wedding. She'll get back with me. And so, of course, I'm feeling like a dope for thinking of this, assuming, these crazy thoughts. But unfortunately, they do, these things tend to, they tend to spiral. At least with me, it could be a certain, distorted thinking, or just even certain insights that are not always so pleasant. I can think of somebody, for example, who got fired, and you can think, I'm just not employable. You can take it to that deepest level where it really erodes your self-esteem or your feeling, purpose for living. That didn't happen to me. Thank God I'm, not employed. That's not my story. Thank God I love my job and everything, but I've seen this happen, or even other situations in my own life where I, maybe there's a social Darwinism, or I don't belong, I'm not capable, I don't have the skills, I don't have the tools to, I'll come up with all these negative thoughts, criticism. And I try to snap out of it, but there's still a feeling like there's a truth that or something I'm ignoring, that maybe there's something that's holding up a mirror, and they're not, how do you, I don't know, how do you reconcile those conflicting thoughts? And, there's habit of, the depression, and, then I'll try to be uplift, but there's still, it persists, unfortunately.
Well, the greatest problem for people psychologically is that they think in a way that creates chronic stress.
Yeah.
When people feel chronic stress, it can take all different forms behaviorally, right? But it's still only one problem. So you have to ask the question, what is it that human beings are doing that creates chronic stress? And the reason why people do so much thinking that's negative is that they've never learned two things. They've never learned that their stress is being created by thoughts they're thinking. People don't know that. People don't know that. If someone came in to see me and said, I have a horrible headache, and they're hitting themselves with a hammer, and they say, why do you think you have a headache? And they say, because my sister-in-law is being so mean to me. And I'd say, well, I'm sorry about your sister-in-law, but what about the hammer?
Yeah, there's an aspect you can't deny that the sister is a problem, but
No, but in the meantime, you're not with your sister and you're thinking about her all the time and you're just hitting yourself over the head with those painful negative thoughts. That's the real problem. That's what leads to chronic anxiety, chronic depression. That's what leads to people looking desperately for something in the world that will make them feel better. So they turn to alcohol or drugs or money or food or sex or something that they think will temporarily make them feel better. But everybody is trying to solve the problem of chronic stress. So it's a misunderstanding. That's all it is. I was a psychologist for 10 years and I was experiencing chronic anxiety, and no one ever said to me, Dicken, you have perfect well-being already because you're a spiritual being. You're connected to a divine wisdom, and it's only getting caught up in thought that's creating your stress. Stress won't hurt people. Chronic stress will destroy people's lives. It killed my father at 57 years old.
Yeah.
God, I'm 77 years old now. 57, he was young.
Yeah.
Right? So the good news is we found the cure for chronic stress. It's understanding the nature, the principle-based nature of human experience. It's created by thought. You can become aware of the fact that you hold thought. You can be aware of the fact you can let go of thought. You can be aware of the fact you're present or not. You can be aware of the fact of what you're feeling and how that's helpful to you when you understand how this works. You can become aware you're connected to God, because when you quiet down, you access a source that brings you feelings that uplift and new and fresh thinking. That's what changes people. That's what we're teaching the kids all over the world now in school. That's what we're teaching people in business. That's what we're, I've been in prisons teaching this to prisoners in prison, men and women. I have many colleagues who work full-time in prisons teaching these principles. It's being taught in universities. It's being taught all over the world now. Why is that? Because it's curing people of things they thought were incurable. It's helping people gain a simple understanding that allows them to wake up out of their daymares and live more present-centered lives and bring more love and kindness into the world.
Maybe also a certain forgiveness. I mean, look, we all.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up forgiveness. I used to think forgiveness had to do with my forgiving somebody's unforgivable behavior. I can't forgive that person for what they did. But then I found out a different way of understanding forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, when we're unforgiving, we're holding on to judgmental thoughts, either toward ourselves or toward the other person. And forgiveness is letting go of the thoughts that are tormenting you. So you know who benefits from forgiveness? You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Somebody once said, forgive is forgive. You're giving yourself. You're not taking, you're giving.
Oh, beautiful. Usher, you. I like having you as a wingman.
I'm the wingman.
You're the wingman.
Okay, Dicken, can we take one more or two more live, and then we go to our closing segment? Where are you holding? How tired are you?
I'm tired, but I'm holding.
You're holding. Okay, there you go. So you have 3 hours ahead of you. Way to go. It's early for you.
I know. I don't know how you're doing.
Also, the East
So
Coast. This is already
my heart goes out to you. I'm usually
letting go of
ready
the
for
thoughts
bed
of
at
sleep.
9.
I'm going to let go of those negative thoughts of sleep.
There you go. Last question.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you. Actually, you're mentioning forgiveness. It's a good segue to my question. What would you say, or what can I say to somebody who is intentionally holding on to their negative thought as a protective mechanism, meaning they think if they're not constantly reviewing how they were wronged and how they're a victim, then they're vulnerable to it again.
Was this someone you have a good relationship with?
Was, yeah.
Because it's hard to teach somebody something that you don't have rapport with.
Yeah, there's rapport.
Okay, good. Have you had experiences of letting go of painful thoughts so you could feel better?
Probably.
If you reflect on what you've learned about that that's helpful to you, that's what you would share with your friend. You wouldn't try and teach them the principles, you'd share what you've learned about the principles that have been helpful to you, what you've learned about how thought can eat away at us if we hold on to negative thought. And if you've seen the benefit of letting go of negative thought, then you can just share your own story. People listen to stories. A lot of people don't like to be taught, but they'll listen to stories. So tell your story.
Like listen to how it's done. Because we've talked about how the negativity is just bad for that person. And that doesn't matter to them.
Well, you find that in your own experience, how holding on to negativity has not been helpful to you, and how when you've let it go, it's been helpful. And then tell her that story.
Okay. Thanks.
People will respect someone else's story because they won't say that's not true because you've experienced it. When I work with people, basically, I'm just sharing with them what I've learned. If I just repeated the words of somebody else or tried to teach a technique, it wouldn't have the impact I have with clients. Rare is the client who tells me they're feeling something that I haven't felt that way at some point in my life. And then I say, what have I learned that's helped me? And that's what I have to offer. If nothing else, then I can just show up with that person, be as present and as loving as I can be. And that's being helpful to someone who's suffering. Even if they continue to suffer, it's you're being loving and compassionate and kind.
Thank you.
Okay, Dicken, let's go to the closing segment. First of all, thank you, Dicken Bettinger, for coming on tonight. Very powerful program, very deep. Hopefully everybody who's not here tonight will listen to it. People who are on tonight listen to it on replay. Try to like really have it seep into you. Hopefully at least some people will take it to heart and change, help them.
If one person did, I would feel blessed, honestly. I really mean that, Usher.
I'll try. I'm going to be your first student. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Again, every Sunday night we have at 9 o'clock this program on the Zoom ID. Now, next week, June 15th, we'll have Rabbi Avichai Cohn. We didn't just confirm the topic. But please join us. Everything's recorded on menachemberfeld.com. If anyone has any questions, please email coachmenachem@gmail.com. Tonight's program is 233. If you want to listen to it on the phone number is 732-305-9011. Of course, you can listen to it on all the podcasts, Apple, Spotify, 24/6, and also on YouTube and all the different things. Thank you to all the advertising sponsors, Lakewood Scoop, Eleanor, 5 Town Central, and Chalik Halfman from JCN. And now we'll go to the closing. Coach Menachem. I'll go first, Coach Menachem, and then Dicken Bettinger will leave with his closing thoughts. I just want to say, in short, my feelings after tonight is I feel, Menachem's laughing already. At the end of the day, thoughts is what makes us, right? This makes us think something's good, something's bad. It's all in our mind.
Yes.
Our mind is the most powerful tool that we have. And it
I
makes
agree.
us super powerful. It makes us do things, makes us think creative, makes us go out of the box. At the same time, our mind does have natural negative thoughts, whether they're pessimistic or depression or sadness. And it doesn't make you good, doesn't make you bad. It could be trauma related. It could be body holds a score. It could be all these different things. It could be all the above. I don't think there's any shortness. But the problem is that when we get stuck in a thought and a feeling, when I was laughing, is that it really brings us down. And the multi-million-dollar question is how when we feel negative, how when we feel sad, depressed, A, B, C, D, A through Z, how do we say this is just a feeling, it's just a thought? And then you're taking it to the next level saying, this is something like touching fire. This is going to burn me. This is just going to put me in this negative twist and pattern. Let me just move out of it. And I think where I have a hard time and people have a hard time is it ruminates, it comes back. I realized one day this week I woke up, nothing was happening. I wasn't working, it was on the weekend, and I woke up full of anxiety. Nothing happened. I just woke up and I was like, oh my God, that's the weirdest thing. I want to attribute it to something. I want to blame Dicken. I want to say it's his fault,
I know.
but he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I realized it was just a feeling and I had to just let it pass. So
Mm.
really, hopefully tonight, I'm telling me, but you're closing if I took it correctly, but just have to look at it as this is not going to be helpful. This is just going to be a negative thought. Let me, I don't know the right word, push it out. I don't want to use the word suppress because it sounds so negative, but you want to get it out of you and you want to go to the next thought. And again, sometimes also the part I don't know, I didn't discuss also is like sometimes there's just a mood feeling. It's not even so much a thought, sometimes a mood you could feel, your body could feel like sad. Could be coming from your thought. I don't know. But that was my feeling from tonight. If we could all at least try this week when you listen to this podcast,
Mm.
when you have the next negative thought, I'm not good enough, what's going to be with this, what's going to be with that, how I'm going to deal with that, just say, this thought's not going to help me in any way. It's only going to make me think more negative. And let me think about the beautiful sky. And we said it true, I say this all the time, is that, I mean, we said this is a famous thing, like right now, there's no trauma. Right now, we're sitting in our comfortable house, drinking our comfortable drink in our comfortable air conditioning house with our comfortable bed. And we're talking about all the fears that could be, what was, what will be. So it's difficult, you know. But then therapy always says go back there and feel it and let's find out and let's. But in certain sense, if you don't, you're suppressing it. So it's complicated. But in short, let's try it. Let's
Yeah.
go with a positive
See,
attitude
find out for yourself.
and find out for yourself and see if your mind could start opening up to imaginative, thinking more positive, being more functional. I find this all the time with work, by the way. I find sometimes I have such a load of things to do. I'm decapitated. I can't do any work. I just like you feel frozen. Then when I say, okay, these were all negative thoughts. Let me just do one task. And when you start doing one, you do one, two, three, you knock it all out. And within an hour or two, all the 25 hours of work, which seemed that it would never be done, is done. And then you feel this rush, almost like a power adrenaline of like calmness, but like success.
Yeah.
And the only thing that changed from before I started to after I started was just the mindset of, let me just do a little bit and just convince myself to get out of that negative rut that I can't do it. That's my feelings. Coach Menachem.
Thank you, Usher. Wow. So what I want to add is what we heard tonight. I think the word is to understand the wisdom, and we're talking to people who even the word emotions sometimes is not in their vocabulary. So some people are suppressing and are not aware, don't realize thoughts, emotions, what you discussed. So on one hand, you want to allow them to feel, and then to realize where does the feeling come from. So this is where we get stuck sometimes. Teaching, these concepts, you would say, if it's just a thought, but there are many people that don't realize the thought, don't realize what they're suppressing, they don't realize what they're. Listen, we live in a world where we have to be productive, and there's a lot going on, and a rat race, and our kids have to grow up when they're 2, and there's no time for this to what we heard tonight, to understand, to listen. So really to understand, listen, learn how to listen. Listening skills also very. How many people could say they've learned how to listen? What do you mean? Like Dicken said, I listened. He was listening to his wife. No, he wasn't. I mean, he was, but he wasn't present.
Yeah.
Present is also new words. People are talking about present, and it's funny because it should be very simple. It's just human beings are only in the present. We're not yesterday and we're not tomorrow. We're just here now. But with our mind, we're never here now. We're always running and going. There's no now. So, start teaching about what does it mean to be here now, like we heard to feel peace and love and happiness, like you said, is only if you stop thinking. Just be here, now. What? I don't know. Yeah, now. Now. You're listening to me talk. That's it. But I have to. It's like what our mind like. So just become aware, understand how your mind works, and then you could see it and say, I don't want to hold on to it. It can be there, but I allow it. I allow it to be. But yeah, it was. Thank you very much. I think listening to tonight's talk helped a lot, and I think for some people can get it after a half hour, an hour. Some people need more. Like you said, the woman that came down to you.
Yes.
So some people need a little bit more to understand it, but it's something that we can learn, not try to learn, because that just adds to the stress. We'll just learn and listen. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Dicken Bettinger, after spending 2 hours with this beautiful crowd of people who are looking to better themselves and their quality of their lives, give us your closing thoughts.
You have everything you need already to live in well-being. You'll still have your ups and downs, but you'll go through your down times much more gracefully if you understand about how your mind works, how thought creates experience, how if you let those thoughts go and you come back to the present moment, you're built to feel better. And then what you need is brought to you by something beyond ourselves. A feeling, a thought, a perception. It's built into us. If people ask me all the time, how can I learn more about this? If you're interested, you could listen to my teacher who taught many, many people in the Jewish community, both here and in Europe. And you can listen to talks that were given by Sydney Banks. There's now a YouTube channel, a Sydney Banks YouTube channel, where his talks are there for free for anyone to listen to. I have a YouTube channel where I give lots and lots of talks about different subjects. And that would be another way, if you wanted to, that you could learn more about this. There are books. There's all kinds of things available if you're interested. So thank you, Menachem and Usher. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this event. And to the people that asked the questions and all of you who didn't ask questions but were curious, I thank you so deeply. Your questions those were all the questions I was asking when I was learning this. So it was a wonderful opportunity to take a closer look at what's really going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Everybody have a peaceful, relaxing week. Take care. Thank you.